How old are you now, Sameer?
47.
47. Okay. How do you know Ripple, by the way?
So Ripple and I, we've done a diploma together
Oh, I see.
in
Okay, okay,
Vivekananda.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
So I think that's how far the 90s, and just obviously doing my electronics engineering, we were
Okay,
together. I
okay,
think since then we've been very, very thick, very thick.
okay. I think we are live now. So,
Yep.
namaste and assalamu alaikum, Sameer Bhai.
Walaikum
Sameer
salam.
Noor Ali. Welcome to the ODHR experience. Experience conversations, as we call them, and this is part of the Rex Karmaveer Global Fellowship movement, where we are basically bringing in people from several walks of life, from several sectors, not just from the not-for-profit sector, but even people from the corporate sector, media sector, news sector, government sector, and influencing them that hey, each of us has to be the change. And like I was telling you in the back end earlier, I think one of the most influential communities which can really impact change by investing in people and making people think about how they can make a difference in our society, in our country, in our world with their small but significant actions is the HR community, because HR directly works with people
Yeah.
and has that influence to truly kind of influence people for making a positive impact, for making a valuable contribution and creating value for society. I hope you agree with me on that. What are your thoughts on
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. So again, to everyone who's live right now, I wish you all and your families a Merry Christmas and best wishes on the festive season. Merry Christmas to all.
Yes.
Jerry, I think so right, and I think the term, even, and people have started calling, and organizations have started calling HR, and they don't call them human resources. I
Right.
think it's about human capital. In fact,
Right.
even at the organization that I currently work with,
Right.
it is about human capital, because at the end of the day, it's this human capital that drives everything, right?
Right.
Whether
Right.
it is the business, the profits, and like I read somewhere, organizations can fail and fall, but if they've got their people element right,
Right.
I think that's really where organizations can effectively build themselves up and thrive.
True. I
That's very
completely
important.
agree with you. And before continuing, passionate as we are about HR, we straight away jumped into the topic. So I said namaste to you and namaste to all our people watching also and all the audience. And thank you for being a part of this. We've been having several experience conversations over the past few months, and a lot of learning and insights which we get from there. And so that said, I like what you spoke about human resource, human capital, and one of my challenges, Sameer, has been, in several HR forums, whether they're NHRD forums or SHRM forums, which is a global mission, uh, they keep talking about, shall we call them human resource, human capital, and I find that a little disorienting, because I'm like, you're just going to change the nomenclature. At the end of the day, you're just going to treat them like lemons still, and squeeze the
Mhm.
lemon to get the juice out of the lemons. That's a kind of analogy that I created to juice lemons, because when I'm working with several people in HR, it's very important to kind of keep the humor intact, because a lot of things which I say are straightforward, and I think to
Right,
get the edge
right.
out of what I say, the humor is very important. So
True.
I keep telling them that you keep squeezing lemons. So this has been debated in several panels. Should we call it human resource? Resources, like, treating them like things. Why don't we call it human capital? But human capital is also has to be monetized, right? But
Hmm.
but what about investing in human potential? What about treating them like human beings? That's something which I've been asking as a question. I follow this very simple learning methodology in most of my training programs and coaching that I do. And I always tell people, I cannot teach anyone anything. I can only make you think. And rather than giving a solution, I'm making you think. Why are we calling them just a human resource or human capital? Why can't we talk about human potential? Why can't we talk about the power and the potential that human beings have? Any thoughts that are being provoked by what I'm talking to you?
So Jerry, look, absolutely right. I think it's at the end of the day, it's the potential that realizes everything. It's the
Right,
potential of the people within the organization that realizes the potential of the organization. And if you look at the stakeholders of the organization, a key stakeholder is the people, and
right,
without investing and a genuine intent in developing people,
right,
I'll just go back to the last. So obviously, all of us are in the pandemic mode and all of that,
right,
and organizations have stepped on. I go back 2009 when,
Right.
again, 10 years ago,
Right.
the pandemic. I just moved back from Australia back to Dubai, frantically looking, for a job. I went back to my old company. So
Right.
fundamental reason I went back to the company that I had left and I'd gone back to Australia back, for school,
Right.
was because that company was invested in developing its people.
Right.
That was my only driver, to kind of go back to my ex company at that point.
Right.
When I re-entered the organization again, felt normal and all was good. I came across a memo from the chairman of the organization, and this
Right.
was just as the then financial crisis had set in. And he said,
Right.
"Guys, times are bad and times are difficult. We will, obviously, take actions from a cost control. But
Right.
there's fundamentally one thing that we will not do is not let go of our people,
Right.
but instead invest in developing them,
Right.
because the crisis will not last forever.
Right.
And when the crisis is out,
Right.
we want to be back, and our people that have served us for years, and believe in us and believe in the organization, we want them to reach their potential. And because they've reached their potential, they will drive the organization, even with more passion, more loyalty, more integrity. And I think
Right.
that's critical. That was critical 10 years ago. And I think the
Right.
same thing that, as a mantra I've used, even in the current pandemic. So I think it's important that organizations realize that without without having that genuine, belief to say, guys, it's people, we must look, it's financial even this time around, right? So
Right.
one of the first things organizations do is tend to cut their marketing budgets, and followed by their learning budgets, or the other way around, right?
Right.
Every organization has done it. Obviously,
Right.
we've seen more, people losses as well, and job losses.
Right.
Yet, what are we doing in terms of our people?
Right.
Right? And I think organizations that believe in them are also selfish in that nature,
Right.
right? And you've got to be say, guys, you know what? Yes, as an organization, we want to be out of the woods, out of the crisis. And when we are out of the crisis and out of the mode, where do we want to be as an organization?
Right.
We want to be an organization that is, that people remember us, that to say, guys, you know what? Of everything else, one thing that I walked out of an organization, and when I moved to my next career change, is that
Right.
this organization gave me an opportunity to grow,
Right.
right? And people as well tend to relate growth with a career growth, to say ladder growth. From an executive, senior executive, assistant manager, manager, so on and so forth.
Right.
But yet, I think one thing that matters most is that how have I grown and developed my potential?
Right.
And was the organization open and welcoming in allowing me to grow
Right.
and to develop myself? Right. And I think that is critical. That's what people remember. That's what they talk about. People don't talk about to other people and say, guys, oh, I earned this much and these many dollars and these many. They talk about, hey, I've grown in the organization, helped and promoted my growth and my
Right.
development.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm so happy that you shared this, because this is music to my ears. Because very few people, especially in leadership teams or the CXO teams, and especially very few people in HR, have this kind of uh, you know um, uh, humane approach to HR, especially in times of the crisis. And I remember what you're talking about is 11, 12 years ago, when the subprime crisis happened. People were fired nilly-willy, right? And many people lost their jobs without the organizations realizing the kind of demoralization that set in and loss of trust that happened, because these are very myopic managers who fire people during a crisis, during a pandemic, or during a subprime crisis that happened in 2008, 2009. And you've seen it during this pandemic. In India, they say 12 crore jobs. These are industry figures, huh? And this is not government figures, because government has no clue what is happening.
Sure.
They are so busy with their petty politics and messing up farmers and everybody else, that they have no clue what is happening. So industry has published some figures which are loose figures. I don't think they're up to the mark, because they say 12 crore. I think many more people have
Many
lost
more
jobs.
people.
In 12 crore, they say 75% of people who've lost jobs are from small trade, the small traders, the micro traders, the micro grassroots entrepreneurs, and the migrant labor. So they've clubbed the small traders and the migrant labor together, while 25% are the white collar jobs in so-called the corporate world, right? Those are the white collar jobs. Because the blue collar jobs and the gray collar jobs, those people don't really matter. without realizing that those are the people who are the pillars of the economy.
Hmm.
But the point is, after all the education that you have, going to the best of schools and colleges and then doing your HR MBAs, if people in HR especially, I mean, CEOs are very profit driven, but if people in HR are not people driven, therein lies a concern and a dilemma. What are your thoughts on this?
So look, I think you got to look at to say, and HR always has that fine battle to say, guys, do we please the CXOs and drive their vision and their mandate, right?
Right,
And that's where the balancing act kind of comes into. Say, on one hand, you've got to manage people and people
right,
emotions. At the end of the
right,
day, it's all about HR
right,
gets the first flag as well, right?
right,
In the good and the bad both.
right,
I think the what I've seen, and I've seen, fortunately, I work for some very very good organizations that are well, obviously times are tough and tough decisions and calls have been taken,
right,
but yet I think we've got to look at it to say, guys, and I can talk about myself because I've not seen the other side. I've not worked with organizations that have been non-people centric. So
right,
very blessed, and that's the first thing that I've always looked for, and I've switched very few organizations in my career. And
right,
the first thing I ask is, what is the culture of the organization?
right,
Right?
right, right,
And culture is critically important, right?
right,
If the culture of the organization is people centric, is about development, right? Uh, how is the focus towards people management, right?
right,
And if they truly value people, or they treat them like commodities, right? And we've seen increasingly organizations that have, that are switching over on the other side, guys. Hey, no, you know what? The people, we can buy these and we can sell these and we can dump these. They're not stocks that you can just go online and trade them. They're
right,
people and
right.
lives, and
There you
lives
are.
are impacted. Lives are impacted
True.
truly, and especially in
Right,
times like these. Uh, Even in times like these where tough and decision calls have to be taken, what are we doing to ensure that, well, our people are realize their potential and that we've ignited that spark that will continue to burn so that they will develop themselves, that we uh, almost just provide a platform that they can develop themselves, right? A lot of times all you require is that push and creating that safe environment that people say, hey, you know what, I want to develop myself and I just need someone to either just listen to me, right? And HR managers, and again, like I said, fortunate, uh, if they just listen to what people want to do, right, and link it back for their own selfish reasons, and I think that's when you get high performing teams, you get high performing businesses, right? And we never know where, and that cross pollination as well. To say, guys, sparks from one area goes on to to pollinate another part of the business. But I think you need to kind of create that environment of openness and say, guys, hey, you know what, let's go and do it. And people will do it. People will do it. I think they just need a little nudge. And it's a domino effect. It's a contagious effect, right? That contagious effect is very, very important.
very
And I
true.
think that's what more HR managers and learning managers need to do, is to move away from that push, because yes, push is important, but also create that pull factor,
Right.
and where people kind of feel comfortable. So I think that's, yeah, I think it's on both, and we'll come to the people side as well in terms of what they need to do, because it just can't be HR from a development, right?
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
also people, and they need to look at theirs. So, but that's, yeah, we'll talk about that in the conversation.
Right. You know, it's amazing how like-minded we are. You sound like my long-lost brother, right? If you remember the old Manmohan Desai movies, right, where all the
We
brothers
live
used to
in.
get lost in childhood, and then they get to meet again when they are when they grow up, right? And you and I, Sameer, you're one of the few guests on the show, or and we've had 5 HR OD experience conversations, and I worked with all the people who were featured earlier, except for Professor Prabha Desai, who's more of an academic, and she's now kind of doing a lot of work in the academic side of HR. But you are a friend who I've never met. There's this very old saying, which is a very dear maxim for me, that there are no strangers, you're only friends we have never met. And it's
Absolutely.
actually so enlightening and encouraging and energizing to hear you speak all that I speak in my talks and in the workshops. And I completely agree with you that, if you invest in people, if you help them to understand their own potential and how they have unlimited potential within them, and then help them to unleash them, then performance and productivity is a byproduct. But unfortunately, what most CXOs, including HR people, because they only see their role as a transactional partner for the CEO, without understanding that their role is much bigger than that, right? Well, they mostly focus on performance, targets being met, goals being delivered, and therein lies the peril. Any thoughts on this?
Um, I think aligned with you, Jerry, on that. And on the other screen, I've got something that I recall from some that we ran for leadership as well. We There's a very interesting book that you can one can read. It's called The Multipliers, right? And
Right,
uh, Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Very very thought provoking read. And most people and most leaders especially don't realize that you know how often are they wearing a diminisher hat and how
right,
often they're wearing a multipliers hat. Now,
right,
as you kind of go through the journey and the process, you realize that I may think that I'm a multiplier, but I'm actually a diminisher,
right,
right? And a key trait of a multiplier as a leader and a leadership trait is called as a liberator,
right,
which really kind of is talking about creating an environment that requires people's best thinking and work,
right,
right? And if you get into that multiplier mode,
right,
that's when you say, guys, you know what? I'm a liberator. I will challenge my people. I will attract the best talent that is there, but I will create an environment that people can go beyond their potential,
right,
right? And that allows
right. Very nice. And you know,
people, yeah,
I've not read this book, but thank you for sharing that insight and the name of the book. And I completely agree with you. You're you're right. I mean, 90% of people, and the concerning, disheartening part is including people in HR, are diminishers. They are not multipliers. They are not growth hackers. They're not people who make people grow. And like you said earlier, growth in most organizations is a slight raise and a a very superficial kind of a promotion from an assistant manager to a senior assistant manager, without realizing that that is not growth at all, because growth is learning. And I always joke with people that all of you went to school and college and you studied, you never learned, because one of the most essential skills of the future is learning to learn. And you went to school and college and you studied and then you got a degree, but you're not really educated, right?
sure.
Now that is the workforce which is working out. Then they do their job. I'm not saying they don't do their job, but just doing a job because it pays the bills, because they're not engaged. And therein lies the peril of the organization, and we'll come back to this later. But I see the role of HR people in HR, including the CXOs and the CEOs too, because HR is not a department. HR is a mindset,
Mindset.
which is a mindset which every manager should have. Because whether you like it or not, the moment you're in an organization, HR is a role, it's a responsibility. It's not a department. It's not the HR head's job to make everybody grow. It's your job to make them grow. So while you teach them the skills required for the job, you're not teaching them life skills, leadership skills, and other skills which are required for their own growth. What are your thoughts on this?
Jerry, so well described, right? So well. I'll give an example, and I obviously talk about examples. We've got for those that have visited Dubai, there's an organization or there's a place called as Global Village, right? It's really
Right,
kind of a melting pot of about 26 different countries, cultures, ethnicities. It's a
right,
massive. It draws about at the last full season, and these are again published numbers at about 7 million visitors
right,
that can walk through in a 6 month period.
right,
The setup works on an extremely lean mean machine.
right,
Right? Very very, if you look at just the numbers that the employees that are there by headcount,
right,
is a very small number. And when I talk to people, I say, guys, that's the size of Global Village in terms of people. They're like,
right,
what, seriously? I mean, you're talking about size of Disney, and yet the numbers are a fraction.
right,
So what makes that attraction, that theme park, and it's a multicultural family theme park, so successful? It's in its 25th season right now,
right,
is because every single individual, even people who kind of just come in and work for the season, during the season, they feel invested and they feel they are an equal part of that business,
right,
right? And when they step out of those 6 months of duration, they've grown, right? And for us, that's very important, because without they learning and without they growing, they will not be able to deliver on our customer promise,
right.
right?
Absolutely.
And at
You you
every
you
step
you
of,
you
yeah.
you you can't have happy customers without having happy employees, because the employees are your internal customers.
So at every step of the day, you're going to look back, and there is leadership as well, that plays the role of, like you said, of HR, right? And the most they are keen and interested is on every single day is to say, guys, do we have unhappy customers? And if there are reports on that, and every minute detail is kind of looked at, and how do we go about achieving that customer happiness index that we have, truly
Right.
in an absolute true sense. And one way is to ensure that, well, we empower our people, we give them the space, we give them the space to make mistakes, by the way. It's
Absolutely.
And that's critical. I think a lot of leaders, what they make a what they well they make a mistake as well. They send people onto to a learning and expect people to learn, come back, but don't want to give them the space to fail,
Right.
right? And I think
Right.
that is unfair, and a folly on them as well, to say, guys, no, people will come back, they will make a mistake,
Right.
they will look at you for exactly those people centricity. So, guys, that's how you develop themselves. Look at them coming up and reaching their potential, right? Because
Right.
all you're doing is you're an enabler.
Right.
You're
Right.
not teaching them skills, you are enabling them
Very
to build
nice.
themselves. I think,
Very
and
nice.
that is a key in terms of purely from a business success. Many such examples that we've seen over the years, but and work with some great leaders as well, fortunately.
Very nice. And I completely love what you're saying. And that is why I love this line by Socrates. And I start every program, every talk, wherever in the world I'm talking, with that one line, that in the next few minutes or hours, what I'm going to say is not tell you what to do with your life. I'm going to make you think about what you need to do with your life. And what Socrates said centuries ago is, I cannot teach anyone anything. I can only make you think. Look at the humility. Now, this is what a teacher is all about, right? Not thinking that he's the only enlightened one and teaching everybody what to do with their lives. And it's called the Socratic dialogue in learning methodology. And that's something that we've created in our Mojo Inspirator book, where we, unwittingly, I actually started working on this concept around 15 years ago when I created my website and email ID when I got into the coaching profession. And I said,
Mhm.
my website is going to be called jerrylearnstolearn.com, and Jerry Learns to Learn 121 at gmail.com. And and that's where it started. And I said, learning to learn has such a big concept behind it. And now learning to learn has been identified in the past 5 years as the most essential skill of the future. Because like I said earlier, that we all go to school and college, we study, we don't learn. And there's a difference. People don't understand the difference. And I'm happy that you're talking about all this, because how do you kind of move from being a manager to being a leader who understands that leadership is the enabling art? Exactly what you're talking about. How do you enable people to understand, unleash their own potential, and grow over here? Because all growth is here. Is What's the point if you've just grown up the ladder and you're not growing here? So it's the same manager who was a junior manager, who's today in the CEO's role. He's not grown here. He's grown up the ladder with whatever jiggery pogery he does, right? Because therein lies the peril of a lot of organizations.
So Jerry, I'll touch on the first part. What you
Right.
mentioned, that obviously school and colleges, and especially in the subcontinent,
Yeah.
they taught us to study, right?
Right.
That was the mode, right? Almost
Right.
cram things and vomit things out. Life makes you learn, right? There's
Right.
there's no doubt, and leaders make you and teach you how to learn. A critical aspect, and just on that learning, or learning to learn, there's a new phenomenon that's happening as well, is our speed and our ability and our agility to not just learn but unlearn,
Very nice.
right? And I think that today, just if we kind of look at that for a couple of minutes, is to say, guys, COVID, for all best reasons, has taught us to say, guys, none of our previous models will go forward in 2021, right? Or majority of them will not go in 2021.
Right.
So one thing is that, well, we've learned, my leader taught me to learn something, and I've acquired a new skill. And now suddenly that skill on 31st of December 2020 is not relevant anymore. In fact, as during the pandemic, was not relevant anymore, right?
Right. Right.
So how do you unlearn, and how do leaders also say, guys, learning is, or learning how to learn, but learning also how to unlearn and relearn,
Right.
right? And I
Very
think that
nice.
is key, because today you almost have to strip down to the bare bone of your entire mindset. And like you said, it's all here. You could just strip it out, take all of it out, and then put it back again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, how is it that there's no disagreement between us? So it's because I mean everything you're saying is absolutely in sync. And I've not primed you or influenced you for this because the whole idea is how, as a person who's leading HR, because you're the custodian then of growing people, and not growing people into the next superficial position, but growing people to really grow here, and to mature over here, what Stephen Covey called as the maturity continuum. And like I always say, you can be 60 and not have the maturity, and you could be 21 and have that maturity, which is what I see in a lot of organizations. The senior leaders who are very threatened and safeguarding their positions don't have that maturity to move from being a manager to being a mentor and a leader, right? And most people, they use that nomenclature, leadership teams, etc., but they're far from being leaders because they like people sucking up to them and apple polishing with them. That's not leadership. Leadership is about creating more leaders. And unfortunately, at least in 80% of the organization, the leadership pipeline is missing. You can see it in Apple. You can see it in Infosys in India. Then where's the leadership pipeline? So you always have to look outside for a CEO. Why is the CEO not emerging from within? You saw the fiasco which happened with Vikas Sikka, Vikas, I think was his name, Sikka, right? The chap who was the CEO before the current person at Infosys. He didn't last. Not his fault, because people didn't accept him as the CEO, as the leader, because they're trying to figure out why is that CEO not emerging from the 1 lakh people who are there, who are Infosicians. Why are we looking out? So you got in a superstar without realizing that it takes everyone to deliver high productivity. It cannot be delivered by a high flying CEO. And I think therein lies the problem, that we don't look at people as potential about at every level. We look at people as superstars or rock stars. And then you see that language in the organizations: hypers, high pots, right? High potential, high performance. And the learning money, unfortunately, is only invested in them,
In them.
while the others are ignored. What do you think about a culture like that? Is that a culture at all?
So, that's unfortunately, I've come across a lot of companies that have that 9 box matrix,
Right.
right? And they say, oh, 9 box matrix, people is in the top quadrant. I'm going to put all the money over there because they are high potential and high performers, and they've done all their performance ratings well. And the performance rating is not even an accurate measure of what you've done in the year, right?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
look at to say, guys, what is someone who's at a junior level, who's a disruptor,
Right.
right? Organizations we've changed, whether you look at all the examples of, whether it's Uber or Airbnb, it's sort of disruptions, right?
Right.
And these are people that, or young generation, that have disrupted the models,
Right.
right? And you got to look back, and as HR leaders or as business leaders, to say, guys, who are people within your business that will challenge you, who are ready to disrupt your business? Because these are the people that you should bank your money on, who will take your business to the next level, maybe in a
Absolutely.
different shape or form, right?
Absolutely.
And as a leader, as a business head, should I be threatened? On the contrary, I would say, guys, hey, you're going to give me my next big idea
Right.
that I will make my next million or billion on,
Right.
right? So I think as a business, and I'll give an example. Another something that we did even early in the year was just ask everyone in the organization, from someone who was a rides operator
Mm.
to the CEO, and say, guys, just throw in your ideas,
Right. Right.
right? Just throw in your ideas, because
Right.
you guys on the field. And what we realized was, even a rides operator or a cashier, or people generally we tend to don't even look at or ask for ideas, to say, guys, they had some of the most disruptive ideas for our business,
Right.
right? And if they are able to give us those and feed us those, and we just take a step back and say, maybe it's not articulated well, but yeah, they are actually making sense, right? So am I, as a business, promoting a culture environment, and I use it, going back to the term of safe environment? Do I have the courage to go to a business leader, business head, even on manager, and say, guys, hey, you know what, here is a great big idea for our business,
Right.
right? Are you ready to listen to that, right? Or are you going
Absolutely.
to be threatened to that, right?
Absolutely.
And I think a
Right.
lot of managers tend to get threatened, and that's a
Because
mindset. Yeah.
absolutely, your bank on, because their security is so low, the maturity is so low that, I mean, all the ideas have to come from me, because, I'm the CEO, I'm the vice president, I'm the president. So if it's a young intern who's coming up with the ideas, they're not ready to accept it. Without realizing that, that chap who's young and raring to go, whose risk-taking appetite is still high because he's not safeguarding his chair and his fancy pay packet, right? And you just shot a great idea right in the head because you don't want to listen to a great idea coming from a young
So
chap
sometimes
who's
not even shot a great idea. You've not even given an opportunity for a great idea to come in,
yes,
right? So shooting
that's where listening comes in.
that's where listening comes in. That's
Absolutely.
absolutely. We had a case where one of our very young employees in the organization, less than a year, 6 months into the organization as well, and she came and she had a clean canvas, and I think the leadership allowed that a clean canvas to be given to her. And she said, guys, you know what? We're running a theme park in a model. And she actually did a complete analysis, and she had direct access to the CEO's office.
Mm.
And she said, I need time with you because some of the rides and the location of these rides within the park are wrongly placed. We're not
Right,
getting the footfall because people don't know about it, whatever, other factors as well. Complete analysis. And the CEO said, you know what, actually you're making sense. Right.
right, right.
We got her
Absolutely.
on a forum where she had the opportunity to address the entire organization on what we call as a knowledge cafe and say, guys, here is a case study that I have done. And people listened in awe and said, wow, we've been walking to the park, we've been running the operations, and yet how come we could not spot that? Because we were so blinded. And by that, the mentality that we have to say, guys, no, 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 no. How can a newbie come to the organization and tell us to say, guys, that's wrong, and have literally the courage to say that's wrong? And yet, we listened to that and we said, guys, let's make the change because it is making sense.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, the best ideas can come from any level, right? And there's this design firm in the US, run by a Stanford alumni. He's a client of mine, and I won't name him on this forum, but he actually says, corporate America or corporates anywhere in the world, they have such bloated egos that they're not ready to listen to people. And he says, in my organizations, I tell people, I am the founder. I'm here just to support you. The ideas are not coming from me, they have to come from you. And they've created one of the best design firms in the world by simply implementing that way. Anyone, right from the person who's serving you tea, can come up with ideas, right? And they've created that kind of a culture in an organization. And now they want to start a consulting firm to go and kind of roll this out. But he says the corporate world is not yet ready for this mindset. Therein lies the problem. And I completely agree with you that, if we create that culture, another thing which you said, which I really liked, where you said space to make mistakes, what I call as creating a culture of failure. And unfortunately, in most organizations, with the jargon that they use, get it right first, or whatever nonsense that rhetoric is. And I'm like, what do you mean by get it right first? Get it first time right? It's nonsense. If you're not allowing people the space to fail, how do you expect people to innovate? Because to innovate, you need to experiment. And to experiment, you need to fail. But you've not given them that space. And then you want game changers to happen in the organization. What are your thoughts on this? Because it's duplicity of thought, it's duplicity of communication.
I think it's in a way. I think it's setting unrealistic expectation, right? And the moment you say, guys, you know what, I'm being washed out where failure is not permitted in the organization,
Right,
where they've seen. I've seen great leaders and great organizations who actually acknowledge and reward people for failure,
right,
right? Because they said, because the guy failed in his first attempt, second attempt,
right,
yet we backed that idea because there was the idea that was more important, the effort that was very important, right? What they put in.
right, right.
Um, an idea cannot be ready for that moment, but it is there. That's what you need to recognize and acknowledge.
True.
What we've also seen is that organizations that don't allow for failure will fail,
Right, right,
right?
right,
Uh, do and managers tend to also have this to say, guys, I will not let my people fail because if they fail and my team fails,
right.
then I will look bad,
Yeah. It's a
right?
poor reflection on them. That's their mindset. But that's not true.
Absolutely. It is not true.
Right.
What I think, just that fear to say, guys, because, well, a lot of times, and most managers, a lot of managers I've seen as well, they tend to take the credit as well, right? Because if
Right.
something goes right, it's them doing it. It's never their teams. If something goes wrong, it's their team that does it, right? What I've seen is great managers and great leaders tend to take ownership of mistakes, right? They'll
Right.
never, go back and say my team member failed, right? It's my accountability, it's my responsibility. But also, am I creating that environment? Am I stretching them? Am I allowing for mistakes? Because if I'm there sitting on the heads and monitoring them and guiding them on step, then I'm not really kind of giving them a space to develop themselves and
True.
develop their potential.
True.
Because people need space and their own space to develop,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
can you can set the very broad parameters to say, guys, that's what your end goal is. And sometimes even the end goal may change as you go through the journey and evolution,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not there, and just because you've committed to something, what you got to go back and as leaders go back and say, guys, yeah, you know what, we did this, we realized that this was not the best approach, but we've learned so many things from it, right? And now when my team goes back in it, they will get it right, and we will get it right, and award them for that, right?
Very
So
true.
I think it's a leadership mindset again, Jerry.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
It's not an HR mindset. It's not. It's just. I think it's just a leadership mindset, and I think leaders is, yeah, that's what leadership is all about. Is really kind of allowing people uh, to be themselves, and to grow themselves, and to really kind of sow the seeds for future leaders, right? Because no leader is going to be in that space forever.
True.
What are you going to leave behind as your legacy? As your
Absolutely.
legacy, that
Absolutely.
when people either leave the organizations, or where you leave the organizations, or people just generally talk about, in a day and age of where people talk about a lot more and are more connected, by that 1 degree of separation, is really, they say, you know what, that's my leader because uh, he allowed me to fail. I'll go back to not even a corporate example. Years ago when I was still a teenager, and I used to do a lot of these scouting, Boy Scouts, and a lot of those elements. And we were at a camp, at a Boy Scouts camp, right?
Right.
And we were in
Right.
different groups, and I had a leader, and she, in fact, because we were in different groups from different settings, and I met that leader for the first time. Uh, and this leader empowered me, and I remember that empowered me to say, Samir, you are the leader.
Right.
You're going to take decisions. You're going to
Right.
guide the team,
Right.
and we all will just do exactly what you tell us and guide us. She was
Right.
there. She was my safety net, so she didn't let me fail beyond a particular point. Right? She
Right.
allowed me to make mistakes.
Right.
Uh, on the last day of the camp, and I went back to her and I said, you were there all the way through. Why didn't you stop me
Right.
from making that mistake? Why didn't you this thing? Why did you put me that on that pedestal? And she said, because if I would have not done that, you would have never realized your potential, and you have those leadership skills. Uh, and all I did was just ignited you. And I think that
Right.
has stayed with me after a good 30 years.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what a great leader does, right? They help you to first see that spark and that inner fire within you, help you to realize that the worthiness, the potential, the power lies within you because you can't see it, and then unleash you, right? And I think that's a great example because what she's allowed you to do is make that mistakes, and it shows that her security and maturity was very high, which is missing in many managers today because they want to take the credit for everything good, but the moment something goes wrong, there's a failure, they want to pass the buck on to their junior colleagues. And I think therein lies the peril of great places to work, you know. And and that nomenclature is great. It's a nice sounding thing, great places to work and a nice certification and a plaque on the wall, but most organizations are not great places to work. And before going into that, one thing I want to tell you is, when I'm looking away, don't think I'm not paying attention to, I'm making notes actually. Yeah. And just because the flow is giving me a lot of insights and about what we need to do to create our goal ratings and make it even better. And before going forward with more conversations about HR, like I was saying to you earlier, I mean, you are a friend I have never met in my life. So I would like to know what has been your journey. I mean, what inspired you to get into the space of talent scouting, talent developing, and talent unleashing, because that's what you are doing very effectively. And though you and I have never met, I can see that in your conversation, and I've been seeing that in the past a few years that I know you, after Ripul Bimjiani, who's my classmate from school, St. Xavier's High School, Bombay, introduced the two of us. And I always use this line in my leadership talk. Somewhere in the very first half an hour of presenting what I'm going to teach them about leadership, I say, great parents make great leaders. And I've known you more as a parent,
Thank
because
you.
that's how we engaged first, because of
Yes.
Simone and the book that she wrote. And I've seen the liberal thought and mindset that you have, along with your saner half, about how you brought them up to be open minded, to be free spirited, to be free minded, to pursue what their passions are. So that tells me that you are a great parent, which automatically means you're a great leader. And that line is very loaded. And sometimes when I say the line, partially people actually tend to kind of tell me, yeah, great parents make great children. I say, no, 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 all parents make children. That's the global pastime. But only few parents are great, because most are just loving parents. So that said, what inspired you to kind of get into the space of talent, potential, and developing, unleashing human potential? Where did it begin? What was the tipping point?
Sure. So Jerry, like you said, right, it's about unleashing your potential. I think
Right.
that's key. So I was not cut out for this, and I'll be very honest, brutally honest. I come from like you said, the common friend Ripple. We come from a technology space,
Right.
right? Hold a master's degree in information technology management, right?
Right.
And yet today I'm doing a lot of talent development and even talent acquisition as well. Uh, so not cut out for this. A lot of my time was spent on people, technology, and processes. I think
Right.
only thing was common between all of those was people element, right? I
Right.
somehow over the years of growing up as well and being part of a very strong community as well. I think that gave me a connect to people and understanding people. I think that was important. Those leadership opportunities I got was very early in life, so that people connect was always there. When I moved into the technology space as well, and I said, and again, that was from a studying background, as they say, and I said that's missing because if you look at most technology, and a lot of us, some of our listeners and viewers as well, and we'll realize that technology, the guys who are behind those technology, with all due respect, and we've got some great technology, but also it's never thought with people in mind, right? And we're
Right.
seeing that paradigm change now, right?
Right.
Uh, and yet I said, guys, this process is not going to work for our people. It's not there. It's from a different mindset. It's what you wanted to do. It's what the business directed you to do, that we need to have great systems and all of those, but it's not going to work for our people. So I came in as a bridge between people and technology.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So that's
So
how the
that's not where
transition happened.
transition happened. I was also very early introduced into the space of e-learning 10 years ago, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
said, guys, it has to be digital learning. We
Right.
can't be we can't be sustaining ourselves, and organizations cannot be will not be able to sustain themselves doing classroom trainings because of our geographic spread, because of reasons. Now, obviously, at those times, there was more geographic spread. Today, it's the COVID spread, right?
Right.
That
Right.
that we can't be in the same physical space. And yet, how do you excite people? And we all have reasons. I have done programs where, and Dubai especially, when we've got retail hours are till 12 midnight and 1 a.m. We've run e-learning programs on language development, right?
Right. Right.
And we said, guys, trust people and give them the platform, and they will learn, right? And all you got to do is have a conversation with them to say, guys, why is this important for them to realize the potential?
Right.
And we've received awards for those implementations or those programs as well. And people would come back and they would share their stories, and they would come back at from a Dubai mall at 2 a.m. Can't get sleep. Let me switch on my laptop or my computer and do some learning. Now,
Right.
what triggers them to do learning at 2 a.m., right? There has to be something that is there in a spark to say, guys, no, I need to do this because I
Right.
need to be somewhere. I
Right.
think that is what then inspires you to do more, right? And over a period of time, again, this just where currently I am, just opportunity happened. And I said, you know what, am I cut out for this? And if I go back to the mindset to say, is this what I can do? And the answer is absolutely. Have I done this before? And the answer is not fully. And like I think Steve Jobs said, right? People don't know until you give it to them,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I said, guys, let me put myself in the space. What will max happen? I will
Right.
fail, right? And I think my manager who recruited me, and he said, yeah, he's not, but he's got that leadership skill and that he's got the potential. He's got the potential, right? And I'm there to kind of go, guide him, mentor him, and coach him. And I think that was key. So again, I thank Jitin for that. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but I think that's what he saw, and that's where I am, and so that's where I'm kind of trying to take the organization even further.
Right. And tell me a little about your early years, schooling, college. Where was that?
So Dubai has been home for me. Well, my childhood vacations have all been spent in Dubai. Mumbai is home. Mom is still in Mumbai. I studied in Bandra, Father Agnew Technical High School.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
from there on, went and did my diploma in industrial electronics. And then there was that that kida or worm, as they say, right? To say, guys,
Typical,
because
typical
yeah,
Bombaya language. Kida hai
absolute kida,
kya?
right? So because dad was in Dubai, and I said, no, I've got to go to Dubai, right? So I didn't pursue my degree, and I just moved on to Dubai. Uh, Studied, and I said, you know what? And at the peak of even at that point in time in 2008, markets were at a peak, everything was a peak, and I said, guys, something is missing. And when I reflected back, and kudos to my better half, and she said, Samir, you need to go back to school because you can't reach your next peak till you take two steps back and realize your potential.
Right. Very
So
nice.
literally, I was in Dubai, all settled, all stable, right, and left my job and moved to Australia to go back to school and did almost 3 years of running around the globe, flying around the globe, working full time, and also doing my master's degree.
Right.
Now that showed me or taught me how to learn, right? And then I came back to Dubai and joined the same organization that I worked. And again, an interesting story over there. Every time I inducted people to the organization, uh, and I said, it's my relationship with the organization. Most people say, how long have you worked with a company? And people say 3, 5, 7. And I would always term to say my relationship with the organization spanned 20 years.
Right.
I worked with them for 17 years, but my relationship was 20 years. And I think that was a very strong statement, even for people who are listening, because it's your relationship.
Right. Absolutely. 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 It's your relationship, which the relationships of trust, which builds a culture of an organization, right? And I completely agree with you because those relationship is what helps people to deliver much higher results than what they are delivering currently in a strategic atmosphere rather than a culture of trust.
True.
And and so rightly said by Drucker years ago, decades ago, where he said culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, most managers quote that, they use it as rhetoric, but they don't understand the
They don't understand.
insight behind that. What are your insights on this? And before we go forward, JC Desai has just joined us. She's our associate and co-founder in the Gold Ratings, along with Avinash Miskita, who's a partner in Tangram Research. JC is a very senior researcher, has worked with some of the top research firms around the globe, and she and Avinash are putting the gold ratings parameters together. And she'll speak with you for, later after we conclude our conversation.
Sure, sure.
So, what are your
So
thoughts on that? Culture eats strategy
culture
for
is
breakfast.
so here obviously you're gonna go through this, and I was telling about the phase where I was with an organization for relationship for 20 years, and one fine day this different organization calls me, finds me on LinkedIn, uh, finds me, calls me, my own team member, and says, and he talks about my previous organization, and he says something negative, and I said, hey, listen, don't talk to me about that because that's in my blood even right now, you know uh, so I was going through the rounds of meeting up people and everything, and I called up a colleague, and because we're into the media business as well, I called up one of the presenters, and the only question I asked him was, I said, how's the culture of the organization? Because after a 20-year relationship, if I'm going to move to the next level, that's the only question I asked him, as to what is the culture of the organization.
Right,
And he gave me, in very profound words, and he described the culture of the organization. You know what, that excites me uh, to move to this organization, because I was not looking for a for a salary jump or a whatever. I was looking for a culture shift and a culture change,
right,
and that's where I am again for the last 2 years. Exciting times, and so I think culture is what the next generation that is coming into the workforce will be asking for. What is the culture of the organization? They will not
right,
be looking for, how much am I going to get paid? What is it? What is the size of the organization? They will ask, what is the culture? do I get space to develop? What is your development strategy and approach, and what are you doing on those? Show me real examples.
Right.
Uh, Tell me that do I have the opportunity to make mistakes, failure, to implement new ideas? What is your innovation story? How has the organization grown over the years? Have managed disruptions? These are questions that the next workforce is going to ask to prospecting uh, employers, and are they going to be ready for it?
Right. Absolutely true. And I completely agree with you. I wouldn't just say it's the next gen. I've always believed this. I'm just going to share this insight with you. We come from the hunters and gatherers age, whereas as human beings who lived as one with animals, right, in that same ecosystem, we would hunt, we would kill, eat what we need, and then share the rest of the food. Until that time, there was no human greed. Then from there we moved to the agrarian age. From the hunters and gatherers age, we moved to the agricultural age, and that's where greed started, because now we started amassing land, hoarding grain, hoarding food, right? And that's where the entire concept of how you need to now introduce God, because you need to govern the lesser mortals so that they work in your fields and make you richer and richer while they stay below, right at the bottom of the food chain. So that's where I believe human greed started, the agrarian age. From the agrarian age, we moved to the industrial age. Now, in the industrial age, most people were treated like, these are guys who need to deliver the products. They need to make the products and manufacture and make us richer and richer, right? So you move from the agrarian age to the industrial age, and people tend to think that in the industrial age people were not looking for culture. People were looking for culture even then, because that's when Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. The only thing is that they didn't have a choice, because there were less choices, there were less opportunities. Then we moved to the knowledge age, right? And what did we do in the knowledge age? Instead of really kind of creating knowledge, we made people into paid coolies. And I should not use the word coolies, career mules, as I call them, right? So you basically started all this concept of BPO, KPO in the name of IT. They were never IT. Where was the innovation? They were more of IT enabled services. And you were using AI and IT to basically dumb down people. So how can you kind of cater to a customer from India at 1/10 of the cost of an American or a European, right? And slowly started the process of dumbing down people in the knowledge age. So in the knowledge age, we we actually stepped back 10 steps and moved even further into the hunter and gatherer age. And now, by sheer demand, I think what you're saying is absolutely right, that people will have to reinvent and recreate that culture, because the next gen is looking for much more than just a salary and just a place to work and have a pay packet, because they're looking for learning. They're looking for people who make contributions in their life. So the market, the young generation, is actually going to kind of kind of put pressure on companies now to reinvent and recreate themselves and create a culture of trust, a culture of learning, a culture of failure, where people can thrive rather than feel stifled. So I'm completely in sync with you, and that's exactly what motivated us to kind of begin the gold ratings also. And I'll come to that in a little while. But going forward, I think we are moving from the knowledge age to the wisdom age, because if you see the study which has been done for many years, whether it's by MIT or Gallup organization, it shows you that people don't just work for money, right? MIT has been doing the study for years that people don't come to jobs for money.
No.
They're actually coming to learn, which is not happening because most people are just being squeezed like lemons. There is no learning, because when the manager himself is not learning, how will he or she invest in the learning of others? They're coming to be be felt like a part of a community. They're looking for that love as a very integral part of a family, which is not being felt because most people are treated like furniture in the office. They're there just to do the job, get the job done from 9 to 5 and out, right? And they're coming to create their legacy, which is what you spoke about earlier, right? You said people need to create a legacy by making positive contributions. And what is the best legacy to create but a culture where you can say that I made people in my team grow? And that somehow has not become a part of the KRAs, because most KRAs, or key performance indicators as they're called, are focused on strategic goals and meeting and delivering results. But that result, a key result area should also be about, are you creating a leadership pipeline at every level? Because every manager has to do that role of HR, which I said, because HR is not a department. Any thoughts on this, my friend?
So completely again, so true, and so well said, Jerry. I think it's what is expected now. It's almost become a norm, right? I think we'll see the younger generation and the newer generation coming into organization where they want to be listened, heard, contributed. It's no longer a singular knowledge economy. It's a shared knowledge economy. Knowledge does not
Absolutely.
reside in one individual. It's collective knowledge. It's
Absolutely.
collective creation of knowledge. Right? If they do not find that space where that allows them to create knowledge collectively, and there's no single ownership as well, right?
Right.
And the manager is not a major stakeholder in that creation of knowledge. He's an enabler. He's
Right.
not creating knowledge. He's enabling people to create knowledge,
Very nice.
right?
I like that.
He's enabling people to make disruptions of thought.
Right.
That's been a mindset. That's how we've done things. Is there any other way to do it? That's what our customers have historically wanted. Let's try it out, right? And there was another interesting concept that I kind of came about years ago, was that 1 degree of change. And if leaders and managers can even adopt that, what is that 1 degree of change you have made? A lot of leaders want to go for that big bang approach. Let's change things overnight. Let's change the entire furniture, people, drop the entire department. No, let's start with subtle changes, that 1 degree of change every single day, right?
Right. I
And if
like
we
that.
manage
One
to
degree.
1 degree of change, and if you can get that 1 degree of change every single day, in 365 days, you would have come across a full circle and a full new department, right? And I think
Right.
that's my personal belief in terms of what I would like to see, leaders of tomorrow head towards.
Very nice. But by the way, have you somehow managed to get a pirated copy of my Mojo Inspirator book, which has not yet got published? Because how can you and I be talking the same language to the T? I mean, I'm a little scared now. And in the book I have written that it's not just, I don't call it 1 degree of change. I said 3% every day. 3% is not too much, right? As an
Right.
individual and as an organization, which means you simply need to ask yourselves three questions. What do I need to start doing, which I'm not doing?
And then what do you need to stop doing and
What do
continue
I need to
doing?
stop doing, which is not working so well? And then what do I need to continue doing
Continue
and
doing.
make it better, right? And that's your 3% every day on these three counts, right? And if you do 3% every day, it's 1,000% plus improvement every year. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, most organizations and most individuals think that they've achieved perfection. Therein lies the problem. Mindset is, oh, sab changa hai. And people are not growing.
And I think what we've also seen historically as well is organizations that have grown exponentially also tend to fall exponentially because of the slightest disruption in the bigger frame. And we've
Absolutely,
seen
absolutely.
organizations going, collapsing and going out of the radar overnight. And these are
Right.
organizations that have lived through decades only because they stopped innovating. They
Very true.
stop listening to their people to say, guys, see this, there's destruction coming in if we don't innovate, if we don't realize the potential of our people and give them that opportunity, we will not survive tomorrow.
Very true. Very true. Absolutely. IBM ran an entire initiative on innovation for 3 years globally. The only place where it failed is South Asia and especially India. Because what is the typical manager's lingo? Hey, Baba, innovate. Sameer, do something different, do something unique, but don't fail, huh? Now, what have I done to you? I've actually told you, don't do anything to a different. Just keep your backside safe,
Yeah,
keep my backside
yeah,
safe, keep everybody's backside safe. And I like what you said over here. The big insight is, before I hand you over to JC, is that collective creation of knowledge. It's not me creating knowledge as a manager. And that's the shift that has to happen. In a lot of organizations, when I ask people, is there a difference between management and leadership? They think it's the same thing. And then I explained to them that management is critical, but management is not leadership. Management is about day to day functioning.
Correct.
about systems, procedures, processes, strategies, etc., execution plan, etc. If you don't have good management, you will die today. But the point is, that's not the peril of the organization. The peril of most organizations is that they don't have leadership. They don't understand leadership. That leadership simply means creating more leaders. And if you don't have good leadership, it's a matter of time before you collapse and die. And that is
Certainly.
what is happening to great big organizations, not great, but big organizations today. They're collapsing because managers in their fetish to achieve quarterly results, to achieve those half yearly or annual results, are actually hacking and axing at the roots of the organization and making organizations weak. And then they call themselves great places to work. And to just share my final thought with you, you know, I wrote this article about how great organizations create a atmosphere and environment for continuous learning and continuous growth, which we have called goal now, GO, at the rate of great organizations at the rate of learning that affirm learning.
Mm.
And the study I did was, based on this, on one side you have great places to work, which is a nice fancy rating, and every HR person really loves it because that kind of gives them their safety net that we are in the great places to work. So we've achieved our KRAs. Right now it's complete bunkum, because if you take great places to work as a rating, forget the rating, look at the nomenclature itself. Great places to work, the fact of the matter is that no place can be great to work, because most places are toxic work cultures, let's face it. Right now, if you compare that with the Gallup organization study, which they've been doing for the past 20 years now, right, they have consistently said that it was 87% till 2017. 2017 it reduced from 87% to 85%. And the crux of the study is that 85% of people who come to jobs worldwide, not just India, not just South Asia, worldwide, globally, hate their jobs. Mind the emotion. It's hate their jobs. They don't dislike their job. They hate their jobs. Why? That's another reason, right? But hatred is a very strong emotion. So what is the reason that they hate their jobs? There are two reasons for this. One is the toxic cultures, which are prevailing in organizations thanks to very immature, insecure managers who don't have that security about themselves to grow other people, because most managers feel that if this person grows, she or he is a threat to me. That is one. Second is that people are not really doing what they truly wanted to do with their lives. That's another reason that they develop what is called in psychological studies as a victim mindset. Now, most people, I always explain this, that there are three places you can be when you come to jobs. You can either do what you love, which is a very difficult space. Doing what you love means you wouldn't be doing a job. You would be pursuing your own path. You would be creating your own path. You would be probably an entrepreneur or an adventurer or whatever. And it's a very difficult choice, because this requires a lot of courage. This requires a lot of security. This requires a lot of passion to persevere and not give up.
Mm.
The other spaces, I love what I do. Yes, I'm doing a job, but I love what I do. And the third space is, I come to this job because it pays my bills.
Bills.
Now, 85% of people are there. Now, if you are not engaged and energized, how can you energize others? The thought is simple, right? You cannot light fires in other people when your inner fire is completely kind of burned out,
Burned
right?
out. Yeah.
Right now, so you have great places to work, you have the Gallup rating, and then you have Glassdoor completely thrashes all great places to work, right? Okay,
Mm.
so there that is the thought process where we said that let's go beyond great places to work and talk about learning organizations based on Drucker's principles and more on Peter Senge's principles. That a learning culture is not about investing in the CEOs and leadership teams and high pots and hypers. A learning culture is about investing in each and every person. And if you're not doing that, your organization is not great. It may be a Fortune 500 company, but it's far from being great, because all you're making is profits. You don't care about people, you don't care about plan, and that shows you. CSR in most organizations is lip service, just like the treatment of people, because managers don't care. They're just looking at their profits, their variables, their incentives, and that's about it. Now, that's what motivated us and inspired us to kind of think about doing something with the learning culture. You will also see this, Sameer, and I'm sure that you in Dubai, you attended a lot of talks by authors and guys who have created personal brands. I won't name any. And some of them actually kind of make me laugh when they, on their LinkedIn, they have this that, I only work with the top leadership teams and the CXOs. And I'm like,
CXOs.
seriously. And sometimes HR people, Jerry, do you work with junior people also? I'm like, who delivers the results? The CEO. It's the junior guy who delivers the results, right? He's the frontliner. If you are not investing in him, what do you mean by even asking me that? Do you work with them? I find it completely strange and bizarre. But this is because that's the culture which has been created. I find it very strange, Sameer, that, HR and learning people will negotiate to the bone with me to beat me down on my fees. And then in that offsite, you see a Himesh Reshamya and a Sonu Nigam who they paid 50 or 60 lakhs to. And at the end of the talk and the end of that performance where everybody is doing Nagin dance, I asked the HR people, is this guy going to give you results going in the future,
Results.
or is it the learning professionals who'll ensure that you get results? So people are very myopic. The mindset is not right. That's what inspired us. Before I hand you over to JC, any quick thoughts on this?
So, and I think organizations need to get their priorities right. Right? It's to say, guys, where is it? Where should be our focus? Examples where even during the current crisis, we said, guys, times are tough. A lot of my budget was taken away. Yet, we managed to create that spark and have that 1 degree of change in one case 80% of a business unit, right? And that was important, and we went down to every single individual. Now, even as we as a department or a function were we in a capacity to go down and have conversations with those many, it was our role to make sure that our managers and leaders were could see the importance and the function and the reasoning about why that was important. So we went out, we said, guys, you need to do the job. We are making you accountable of creating and developing your potential, because times are going to come back, right? And we need those people to be able to perform better. So literally, we kind of empower those managers. Say, guys, hey, go back. We almost used a coin, and I use a term instead of COVID-19. We called it co-skill 20, right? As a spoof and a take on, and it worked. It worked, which also meant that, and we weren't targeting the CXOs for their a big outside overseas forums or a lot of that. We had people from the rights technician down to the office admin guys, because these are the guys that actually make the impact,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. They are the ones who deliver the results. And I often tell people, because when I engage with organizations for a visioning exercise, it's like a 5-day to a 10-day exercise to get the vision, mission, strategic goals right. And I ask those leadership teams, I'm like, where are the guys who deliver the results? And they look at me like, I'm talking some strange language. And I'm like, I want the sales guys, the frontliners in this room, because they have the grassroots wisdom which is lacking. And I give them the simple analogy that it's like sitting down in Dubai or Nariman Point or Gurgaon or London and coming up with a great strategy for farmers who are working in Maharashtra, Punjab or Haryana or Gujarat. How would you know what the farmers pain points are, what the condition of the soil is, what are the things that are lacking for irrigation over there, until and unless you don't go and dirty your hands in the soil? So please bring the farmers into the room. And
Or
I
you
think
go to
that,
the farms here.
yeah, and that's where the complete strategy and the vision is all awry, because most visions are just plaques on the wall without really being realistic. They're fancy sounding statements made by some good advertising agency and organization like McKinsey and Bain, but they have no reality check. It's a complete mess on the ground. That's where strategy and execution fails, because there's no ownership, there is no clarity of thought, there is no execution plan. And that's why I always tell them, please bring the farmers into the room. For me, just you in this room is unimportant, because if the farmers are not in the room, we can't get the vision right. So thank you so much, Sameer, and I'm going to conclude with some insights later, but we have JC who's going to share her thoughts and
Thank
insights
you.
with you. Over to you, JC.
Yeah. Hi, Sameer.
Hey, Jay-Z.
Can you hear?
Absolutely.
Hi.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for joining us. So, my thoughts are basically, I'm from the research part of this, for the gold, to evaluate the parameters. So all my questions are going to be directed towards that. So you said some very interesting things on like the co-creation of knowledge or failure, or the space to develop, the space to fail. Okay, a lot of these attributes. How do we, or these concepts? My point is, how do we evaluate or quantify in any way so that we can assess an organization? So my questions are basically directed to that. So let's start with this co-creation of knowledge.
Right.
How would one evaluate? We have developed a questionnaire and it's all there
Sure.
in its place.
Sure.
Of course, we want your thoughts so that we can fine tune this and make it a more richer and good process of evaluation. So how would one evaluate this whole co-creation of knowledge?
Right. Okay.
Are
So
there any
look,
specific thoughts you have?
so I think this is one is and again I'll go back to the previous conversation that Jay and I were having, is about the moment you start putting in parameters and start measuring it with boundaries, that's when you would tend to lose. Because then you're saying, guys, if you not hit a 5, you failed, right? And if you've hit, if you've won, you've definitely failed. You've got to be 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And I think that's where the purpose is defeated. I think, like I said, it's very difficult to measure culture. So when you talk about, how do you measure knowledge creation? Yes, you can all have technology that kind of captures knowledge of this thing. What your organization should be doing is, and should be measured, is to say, guys, and something that I learned from my new boss as well. And her mantra is each one teach one. It was a new thing. It was very profound as well, to say, guys, can we actually go down and measure to say that every single employee or colleague of the organization, however, junior or senior in that, have they had an opportunity to teach someone in the organization, or in that effect, share their knowledge with someone in the organization, right? It could be a colleague, it could be a peer, it could be a manager, but have we provided that platform where every single person in the organization has had the opportunity to, and knowledge can really be expanded only when you have the opportunity to teach or share that knowledge, because that's when the whole concept of of expansion of knowledge, it expands as you share, right? And I think if we can start measuring on those to say, guys, how many such touch points have we had, right? How many such points or platforms have we given to, not to people at senior leadership levels to kind of come in and share their thoughts and wisdom and big strategies. How many opportunities have we given to sparks within the organization and a wider forum to say, guys, hey, here is a platform for you to share your knowledge, right? And what we've seen is a very positive, and it's been a journey, right? So the first time we had about, in fact, they were in a physical space, they were size of the room, 20 people. The last time we had about 80, 100 people, or within the context of the size of an organization, that came in for these sessions because they said, you know what, that's music to my ears. That's what I want to listen to. That's a great idea. And it's an idea from one part of the business that I can use in another part of the business. And to me, that's knowledge, not just sharing, but knowledge creation. And I think as if I look at it and say, guys, have I done my job well? And the answer is then yes, because I've enabled that space for people to say, guys, and I won't be judged on it.
Teach.
Yes, I won't be judged to teach. Yeah.
Okay. So in this platform, people come and share their thoughts, or they are training someone. What happens?
So we've created a concept called as
happens?
knowledge cafe, right? A knowledge cafe is, and that's why it's, it can't be one of those hard concepts to say, guys, it doesn't have it has a framework. It has a framework. It doesn't have a boundary, right? It's literally a 60-minute thing. We say, guys, here it is. You may present on your area of knowledge, share expertise. And today, as much as, and we all have been through journeys where trainings would be 4 days, offsites, all of that. From there, it came down to a day. From there, it came down to half a day. And from there, it came down to bite-sized learning, right? So here's, we're giving you an hour. You can take more if you want. And we've given you an hour of this knowledge cafe. That's typically a cafe conversation would last, right? And here it is presented. You don't have to kill by PowerPoint. You can just have a conversation. If you want to use
Okay.
data, metrics, statistics, use them. By all means, structure your content and leave it open to sharing
Okay.
ideas and soliciting ideas, right? And using those.
Okay.
So literally, and colleagues
Very
have done is
interesting.
they've done and they've spent about 40 minutes presenting an idea or a case or a thought as well. And they've spent the next 20 minutes, which has expanded to the hour, just talking about ideas. And suddenly a conversation that
Right.
began in one space has gone into a different conversation from one part of the business or function or department into another part of the business or function or department. Right. So something that we use
Okay.
effectively at work is called knowledge cafes as a concept of creating and sharing
Excellent.
knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So that's okay. That's a thought which we've also been looking at. Is not just look at the attributes, but see what actions or activities a corporate is doing, right? So I think that will take care of some of the evaluation aspects. If you look at okay, what are the like if a company has a knowledge cafe, we know that there is a direction towards wanting or the platform towards learning, right? So I think
And then you
not just
capture.
evaluate attributes.
Sure. And then you capture,
Yep.
right? So we've got, obviously we've got mechanisms to capture innovations or ideas or thoughts, right? And the intent is to say,
Right.
guys, every single so it's an online portal, and anyone in the organization can contribute to ideas, right? And there's no good
Okay.
idea or a bad
Okay.
idea, right?
Right.
It's just an idea.
Okay.
And I think that's
Any
fundamentally you got to
ideas?
realize it's just an
Okay.
idea. It's a thought. It's my emotion. And it maybe a repeat, it's not ready for the culture environment right now, but it is an idea. And I think the first thing as leaders
Okay.
is to acknowledge, to say, guys, thank you for that idea, right? Because maybe even
Yes,
that idea
that's right.
can transform
Yeah.
and into a different shape and form
Mm-hmm.
and impact something else, right? Because one idea can lead to another idea,
Right.
right?
Right. To another.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
and address another
Well,
problem altogether, right? And then every idea, then you kind
right.
of route it to those, to those heads or leaders to say, guys, that's it. And also then you educate them to
Mm-hmm.
think with open eyes and open mind, right? Rather than saying, guys,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if this idea comes in or if this uh, knowledge comes in, is it gonna impact me
Mm-hmm.
personally or is it gonna impact me positively? And actually, it's gonna impact the organization and our customers.
Right. Okay. So I'm just thinking aloud. Maybe if we look at the ideas or the innovation, I'm not sure if they'll share with us, but if we look at the ideas and innovation over a certain period of time, that may help us get a further understanding of how good the place is to that affirms learning, right? It's possible.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. The one thing that again, as a measure, so by the way, we also use the Gallup survey, and one of the questions that is there in the Gallup survey that gives us as a yardstick is to say, uh, are my or is the leadership open to listening to ideas, right? And that's
Right.
something that we kind of measure, right? And the question doesn't say is are those ideas being implemented. It's about
Hmm.
do I have the opportunity to share my ideas,
Share.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a
Yeah.
measure that we use, quite strongly to say, guys, as an organization, am I encouraging thought? Am I encouraging
Right.
ideas? Am I a good listening organization? Because I think successful organizations of today and tomorrow will be organizations uh, that as a collective mindset are listening organizations where they listen to their people, they listen to their customers, and they
Right.
listen to all what is not being said as well.
Right. Okay. Got it. So in our framework, we're not just looking at evaluating in terms of a scale, which is very quantitative. We're also looking at a qualitative, a deeper probing of, not the entire sample size, but a small percentage. So we're hoping that that will give us the a richer context and setting to the quantitative data also. So that's the way we are looking at evaluating. Okay. And so going back to another thought that you had shared, which was about space to develop and space to fail. So how would any thoughts on how we could approach this? in terms of evaluation?
Uh, difficult one.
Yeah,
I must
yeah.
admit to say, guys, how do you measure those space to fill? And I think organizations have to be really mature to kind of say and to accept, especially at leadership level, because with complexities of business models, how often or how ready are we to say that we failed 10 times but we were successful
Hmm.
once,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
um, Yet mature organizations and mature leadership
Hmm.
will give you those explicit examples to say, guys, yes, we allowed for that, we listened, um, we tried it, and yet it did not go as per plan or as per
Hmm.
what it was envisaged for. But I think just having that maturity to kind of say, guys, of acknowledging and acceptance, and that is something that at leadership level, it's not just about saying, is it a yes or a no box, right?
Hmm.
Every within the organization, if you had to take a sample survey as well, you should be asking that question to every manager to say, guys, list me uh, three examples or stories where you failed. In fact, so when we scout for talent as well,
Hmm.
at senior levels, one of the questions that we definitely ask is, show us, or tell us an example of your, despite your great efforts,
Yeah, and
that
you
you failed,
fail.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
when the answer is received, and our next one
Hmm.
follow-up question is to say, guys, what did you learn from that failure,
Yeah, that's
right?
right.
So that's important. So guys, do we record or do we document somewhere, tacit or
Right.
explicit, to say, guys, these were the failures and what did we learn from those, right? And
Okay.
were they inspired? And sometimes you're going to fail because uh, that will lead you to something else,
Right. Got
right?
it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And another thought that we had in terms of the evaluation was also looking at the individual's motivation. So we
Mhm.
start off with understanding what is motivation towards working itself, towards making a career. So which could be so we are using a set of projectives and trying to get a kind of a descriptive answer to this. So it's about understanding the motivation on not a, it's Dr. Halen's model. Okay, so is it that I want to reach a certain position in my life or status in my life, therefore I'm at a job, or is it about wanting to control my life, or is it about expressing my own talents and those kind of. So those are the motivation states that we are looking at, and we will assess that with the individual at the start of the whole evaluation process, because we believe that that could influence all his other ratings. Because if he's a person who is interested in just about managing his life and controlling his life, his whole approach to work is very functional. It's about the guy who comes in for the pay packet, as compared to the one who's there because he's passionate about work or is passionate about expressing his talents, right? So, what do you feel that will is this something which you've seen in other evaluation? Is this do you think this will add
So I
a
think
good?
in a part of world where I live currently, I think if you look at the vast majority of the population, it's an expat population, right? It is an
Right.
expat population, and the expat population and unashamedly is there for one solid reason, uh, is to work and to make money, right?
Money.
Now, is it money as a core and central driver because they've got to feed dinner on the plate for their family, either in the country where they're currently residing or back home, right? So they're there because of that core driver.
Right.
Now, and if that's going to be even in your analysis at 80% of that's why people actually are there. The second question then that leads is, if that is the sole purpose, then what drives me and what motivates me to wake up in the morning and excites me to go to work every single day, right?
Hmm.
Yes, I'm there for the money, right? Otherwise, I would
Yeah.
be in my own, I could be doing whatever. Entrepreneur, it would be difficult, but I would be doing that. This is a safe zone.
Hmm.
But yet, what forces me, and you look at, our children as well. Are they excited about waking up in the morning and going to school, right?
Okay.
And I've got 2 grown-up kids, and yes, and they are excited to get up and go to school because the school is providing the environment that
Mm.
is helping them thrive. And if I'm going to wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. and go to work, I'm also looking for exactly those same thrills as a child to say, is my workplace
Mm.
giving me those thrills
True.
and exciting me to come to work every single day from 9 to 6
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes stretching for more hours and working over the weekends, all of that. Something is there, right? Because
Right.
otherwise, people will
Right.
then keep switching jobs at every single opportunity that they get,
Right.
right? Because then money
Right.
is the sole driver,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the
Right.
question is, what is motivating them at work? What is engaging them at work, right?
Okay.
A core
Okay.
aspect is that satisfaction to say, guys, I've contributed every single day. I have felt
Mm.
worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
an aspect of that is to say, guys, yeah, have I really kind of done something? The 1 degree of change that I mentioned earlier, that as individuals as well, have I given that 1 degree of change to the organization as well, for which I'm earning my
Right.
bread, right? And if I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing that, or I could be doing in a very robotic job, going in, doing that, and coming out. And when I'm out, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
think that's the measure to say, guys, do you feel satisfied, engaged, passionate,
Okay.
driven to go to work? Right?
So that's another layer you would add
Yeah,
besides,
yeah.
right, right. So in when we assess that layer, what we are saying is a person who's operating out of fear and insecurity as compared to somebody who feels far more secure about himself and about his situation. It's also about his larger perspective towards life, which defines his perspective towards work also. So there are people who operate from fear and there are people who operate out of security.
Yes, Chasey. So look, people working out of fear and working out of security, right? Look at the current times we are in right now. So if you ask a question right now,
In
is
spite of that, there are still
this
people who,
exactly, absolutely.
yeah.
So despite that, to say, guys, there's uncertainty. The times are unprecedented, no doubt about it. Yet, am I going to work and I'm delivering what I'm supposed to and I'm doing what I'm supposed to out of fear or out of passion,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And I think if we still say, guys, it's beyond anyone's control, it's out of my circle of control, and yet I am there despite not knowing
Right.
what's going to happen tomorrow and doing what I am.
Hmm.
There's 2 things that'll happen is, right? Obviously, one, I've gone, I've contributed, I've also taken back from the organization. I have grown
Right.
as an individual, right?
As in,
So tomorrow, if the circumstance change as well because of the wider
mhm.
environmental changes, then wherever I go, I will go back and plow those thoughts and seeds and ideas and best practices and innovations and all of that to the next person I meet, right? And to
Right.
the next organization I
Right.
meet, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's coming back to say, guys, you're measuring engagement. You're not measuring performance, you're
Mm.
measuring engagement. I think that's a key one,
Engagement.
is about measuring engagement. How engaged I am with the organization.
Mm. That's right. Yeah. Okay. I think that's from my side. Those are the questions.
Thank
So
you.
on to Jerry, and thank you, Sameer, for being with us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JC. Brilliant insights coming out over there. And I completely agree with you. That's why we are putting all the parameters in place, because though culture cannot be measured, I think with the right parameters, we can create a measure, because what cannot be measured
Measure.
cannot be improved. And the whole idea
True.
of creating the rating is that learning culture cannot be taken for granted, that we have achieved perfection.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as
There's
perfection.
no
I
such
always
thing as
say in my
perfection.
books that perfection is the biggest lie of the world. No country, no organization, no person, nothing can be perfect. Continuous improvement, Kaizen, is the name of the game. And that's again a part of the learning culture. And Kaizen, continuous improvement, happens when you have feedback, a culture of feedback. And unfortunately, that
Mhm.
culture of feedback is not there in most organizations, which should be included, JC, in the parameters. That do you have a culture of feedback? Not giving feedback to your juniors, no.
No.
Mm.
Feedback where
Yeah, that we have.
where juniors can give you feedback. So are
How
your
many
True.
managers
direct
are actually
report?
asking their subordinates to give feedback, right?
right.
You
Yes.
really have the courage to
Yeah.
ask, to say, guys, tell me
Right. And
as a,
That's
it
true.
should happen without a 360 being enforced, which means it's a culture, it's not an enforcement. Where I go and I sit and I say, hey, Sameer, you know what? You report to me, but that doesn't mean that I'm the most perfect guy in the world. So tell me, what can I do to improve as a manager and become better, where I can be seen as a person who's contributing in your growth and your learning? And am I asking that? No.
Jerry, do we ask our children, how am I
Yeah.
as a dad, as a person?
Absolutely. And there comes the entire concept of great parents make great leaders. You must have just seen a while ago, my 9-year-old just came to me, and I made a mistake today while I was entering the building. I'd gone out for a meeting. And while I was entering, and I saw him playing badminton with some of his friends. And I said, Chintu to him, right? Now, he's told me once earlier that you can call me Chintu at home, but not in front of my friends.
Friends.
So he came back and told me, I told you before, and I'm reminding you again, you're not supposed to call me Chintu in front of my friends,
Into
right? So you're
right.
absolutely bang on. And that's what I've written in my book called The Ninth Habit, that feedback is the multivitamin of champions for continuous improvement. If you are not seeking, celebrating, and rejoicing feedback from your direct reports, you're far from being a leader. That's security and maturity,
That
folks.
is, yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because whether you like it or not, so, your direct reports spend much more time with you than your children and even your spouse. So
true,
they know exactly what kind of a turkey you are.
very true, very
You
true.
know what I mean? And I think that should be a part of the measure and the part of the parameters. Do we have a culture of feedback without 360-degree
Feedback.
assessment or appraisal being enforced? Because that can surely be measured. I've written this in the book Ninth Habit, and we launched this at the British Council Learning Week last year, where it went across the world, and I hope people were listening. And I said the entire concept is that I need to take feedback on certain parameters. And like I told you earlier, just to share some insights from what you have been saying, you surely have kind of pirated my book from somewhere, man. you know I get hired sometimes by HR, by people in HR heads, to sit on interview panels. And in interview panels, I have of course studied the resume that people have sent, and I know exactly where they are fudging, where they are, because I'm an NLP practitioner, neuro linguistic programming, so I know exactly where people are, right, uh, doing their little bit of hedging and fudging, right. I wouldn't call it lying, but it's a little bit allowed, yeah. And then I make it very clear to them that these three guys on the panel who are from the organization, they care about your degree and your resume and your experience and your fancy education in some expensive school. As far as I'm concerned, for me, it's all bunkum. Doesn't make a difference. I'm going to ask you just 10 questions, and they are not focused on your degree, your competence. They're focused purely on your character. And at the seventh question, if I don't get a satisfactory answer, then we are not taking this conversation forward. I'm going to give you, actually, the seventh question should have actually been asked third, but I give them space till seventh because I also use this as an opportunity to do what I call as guerrilla coaching with candidates. And the first question is, who are you? Most people can't answer the question. The second question is, what is your purpose? Most people don't have one. Third question is, what is our purpose? What is our vision, mission, and everything? They can't answer that. So I'm like, you come to an organization without knowing what we are all about for a job, which means you're just going to join us to pay the bills. But no worries. I'm still not going to take a decision on whether you're in or out. The seventh question, I won't tell you the other three in between because otherwise I'll be axing my own legs. It'll be a Sheikh Chili move. People won't call me for sitting on interview panels. The seventh question is, tell me about a significant failure you have in the past 6 months. And most people are like, no, nothing in the past 6 months. Yes, early in my career. I'm like, thank you very much. We shall not be getting back to you. Seek a job somewhere else. And people are always wondering, why is it that on this failure question, where the guy has not failed, is it that I take my call? I say he'll bring complacency into our system. This guy is a complacent, no good Nick who is so used to his comfort zone that he's not going to bring any energy into your organization. So this is where we had to take a call. And before that is the question about a significant success, and they have laundry list.
Oh yeah.
But on
Oh yeah.
failure,
No.
so I think that's a very important thing to measure, and that's a great significant insight. So surely that can be measured about how people talk about their failure, right? And there's some great insights over here. Are we creating a space to make mistakes? What we call as a culture, what I call in my terms is a culture of failure. You said earlier that life makes you learn. Unfortunately, I don't think it's true for everybody. People walk through life like the living dead, man. They're like zombies, you know? They're just walking through this earth. There, there is no passion even about themselves. You know, I call them the living dead, dead men walking the earth. I mean, unfortunately, and you're right that life can give you great life lessons in the university of hard knocks and the school of life, but most people are not paying attention, and therein lies the problem. So we should look at that. That what are the life lessons that this person brings to the table for his team members, and those life lessons need not come from 40 years of experience. They can even come from a experience from childhood, right? And then I think a very important key insight which you shared is, are we having a culture where people are making contributions in the lives of the people that they work with? Not just that they're apple polishing their bosses, but making positive contributions in the lives of their direct reports. That is your legacy. No one remembers the car you drove or the fancy title you had. They remember the contribution that you made. I had my first boss. His name was Kushru Dordi. And Kushru Dordi, whenever he used to take me for a meeting, I was a 16-year-old rebel without a cause, rebel without a pause, trying to find my footing. And he was the CEO of a division in Indian Express. And whenever he took me for a meeting, this 36-year-old man, 37-year-old man, would always introduce me by saying, "This is Jerry. We work together." He put me on the same level as him. I had two more bosses after that who would say, "This is Jerry, he works for me." And in my mind, I would say, "I don't work for you, you idiot. I'm just tolerating you. It just happens to be that you're my boss." You know. Now they're good beer buddies, and I tell them, "You're still a lemon squeezer, man. You will never change." Right? So that I think is very important. Are we creating a legacy by making contributions in the lives of the team members, peers, etc.? That is a good measure. And finally, are we enabling people to create collective knowledge, or does all knowledge begin and end with me, my way or the highway? That I think is not even a good manager, forget being a great leader. And I think that's where all our leadership lessons come in. This is what we are taking into schools and colleges also now, because I truly believe in that old saying by Frederick Douglass, who said that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And working with corporate executives in the UN and international NGOs the world over, I've realized very difficult to repair broken men. So this is you will see that's the Rex Karmaveer symbol. It's a human being humbly kneeling down to make a difference, not waiting for people to come to him and beg him to make a difference in their lives. So and that's my favorite quote, my favorite teacher. And this is the learning that we have created over the past 17-18 years by studying around 250,000 people, researching 5,000 books. And it's called the Mojo Inspirator: Life, Leadership, and Learning to Learn Lessons. So it's not just leadership, it's life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons, if you see it over there. And learning to learn, because how do we teach people how to learn in every situation from every human being? Because you can learn from your direct reports. If you think you can only teach them and mentor them, you lost the plot. You don't understand. And the other big problem is that uh, I've seen people like, you have this guy who was caught on the Radia tapes asking for some land for fixing the 2G deal. Chap called Tarun Das from CII, who calls himself the chief mentor, or Narayan Murthy, who calls himself the chief mentor, and the startup industry where everybody calls themselves a mentor, but they're merely investors. Because mentoring is an art, a craft, and a science, and they don't understand the aim of mentoring. So I think one of the things which is very important for parents and managers to learn is the skill of mentoring, because mentoring encompasses all the principles of coaching. And I think that's the transition of moving from being a lemon squeezing manager to being a potential unleashing leader, that you mentor people, and in that process you're also being mentored, because mentoring is a two-way process. It's not a one-way process where you teach, you also learn. And I think that is another thing which we can actually bring into the parameters. I'm sure JC you already thought about it, but just to kind of reiterate and reinforce, because there were some great insights in this panel today. And thank you so much, Sameer. Some great insights over there.
Thank you.
So thank you for your thoughts, and thank you for
Thank
making
you.
the time to be with us. And
It was a pleasure.
namaste.
Thank
Have a
you.
great Christmas. All of you at home. My regards
Thank
to
you.
Simone, Adam, and the family. And
Thank you.
JC, you too. Merry Christmas and
Jesse, Merry
enjoy,
Christmas. Sure.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
enjoy your
Thank you, Jerry.
enjoy your trip to the Northeast. Have fun.
Christmas.
All right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
That said,
Thanks, Sameer.
so
Bye.
JC, after speaking with you, I've decided not to have a panel next week because 31st Eve any which way. So we'll do it
Yes.
straight on the
Yeah.
7th of Jan now. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
Sameer,
Thanks.
so
Very good.
you were the closing panelist for
For the year
2020,
2020.
the year
For the
that
year.
the year that was not a year. So
The year that was not the year.
all right, thank
All
you
right.
and all the best. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
See you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Good night. Yeah. Bye.
Good night. Good night.